Chapter 2: The Buttered Bandits. Poppy hesitated for a moment, his expression darkening. The air around them seemed to grow heavier, and the once carefree breeze from the caramel plains now felt cold and oppressive. Poppy's usual jovial smile was gone, replaced with a seriousness that made Lucy's heart tighten.
"They're a band of thieves who want to steal the Kernel of Eternity. If they get their hands on it, they'll plunge the Corn realm into chaos. It's a powerful artifact. One that's been protected for centuries."
Poppy explained, his voice sounded unfriendly. Lucy blinked, her mind struggling to process the weight of his words. A band of thieves? A kernel with the power to bring chaos? She had barely gotten a grip on the idea of a magical corn realm, and now this new threat seemed almost too much to comprehend. The golden fields around them, which once seemed so innocent, now appeared to shimmer with a dangerous undertone. She felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't signed up for any of this, first an enchanted kernel, then a magical corn realm, and now, bandits with buttery cloaks? She glanced at Poppy, his face taut with tension. He was no longer the playful, whimsical guide he'd been earlier, but a serious protector of something far greater than she could have imagined. Lucy swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. The thought of facing these thieves sent a sharp tremor through her. She felt like she had been thrown into the deep end without a flotation device, and now there was no way to swim back to safety. The stakes were high, and something told her she couldn't turn back now. Her fingers tightened into fists as she tried to summon whatever courage was left inside her. Before she could respond, a loud, sinister laugh echoed across the caramel plains. The sound was bone-chilling, like a jagged crack in the stillness of the world. Lucy whipped her head around, her breath catching in her throat as her eyes locked onto the approaching figures. The bandits had arrived. The Buttered Bandits moved like a pack of wild animals, their cloaks billowing in the breeze, each of them dripping with butter so thick it seemed to shimmer and writhe with a life of its own. The sunlight reflected off the gooey fabric, casting an unsettling glow on their faces. The leader of the group stood out from the rest, tall and imposing, with caramel-stained teeth and a smirk that dripped with malice. His eyes gleamed with a dark hunger, scanning Lucy and Poppy with predatory interest. He exhaled slowly, savoring the moment. He looked like someone who reveled in being the villain in an old-timey film, twisting his mustache as he plotted his next move. His voice oozed with contempt, slick as the butter on his cloak.
Well, what do we have here?"
The leader drawled, his gaze settling on Lucy.
"Hand over the girl, Poppy, and the map, now."
Lucy's heart skipped a beat, her pulse quickening as fear surged through her. Poppy's warning echoed in her mind, the bandits had found them too soon. Panic set in, and her thoughts raced. What now? The weight of the kernel in her bag seemed heavier than before, its importance clearer. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about protecting the future of the corn realm itself.
"Run, Lucy! Run!"
Poppy shouted, his voice sharp with urgency.
"Get to the path and don't look back!"
Without thinking, Lucy bolted. Her legs burned as she pushed herself harder than ever, her feet slipping and sliding on the sticky caramel ground beneath her. The air around her seemed to thicken with the scent of melted sugar and butter, making every breath feel heavier. She stumbled, her foot catching on the uneven terrain, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Behind her, the bandits' laughter grew louder, like the sound of waves crashing against a cliff. They were gaining on her. The leader's mocking voice echoed in the distance, taunting her with every step she took.
"You won't get far, girl. No one escapes us."
Lucy's breath came in ragged gasps as she pushed herself harder. The path ahead felt like it was stretching out forever, the caramel plains suddenly becoming an obstacle course filled with traps and pitfalls. The caramel beneath her feet seemed to come alive, oozing and bubbling, threatening to swallow her whole. She heard a loud splat as something sticky and viscous splattered nearby. She turned just in time to see one of the bandits launch a glob of melted butter at her. She ducked, barely avoiding the gooey mass that would have ensnared her in its thick, clinging grip.
I can't keep running forever.
She chastised herself while feeling terrified. With each passing second, the sound of pursuit grew louder. She could hear the unmistakable slap of boots on the sticky ground behind her. They were closing in. Lucy's heart raced, her limbs beginning to feel like lead as exhaustion set in. She glanced to the left, where a massive puddle of caramel was beginning to bubble up from the earth, its surface rippling like a viscous trap. She swerved just in time, narrowly avoiding the sticky net that shot up from the ground, its golden thread snapping and tangling in the air where she had been moments before. Panic surged through her. How much longer could she keep this up? The path ahead had become a blur, but she could make out the outline of a large bridge up ahead, shimmering in the dim light. The sugar-coated bridge stretched across a river of bubbling cola, the fizzy bubbles rising in foamy peaks, looking like a dangerous and unpredictable obstacle. With one final burst of energy, Lucy veered right, her feet slipping on the sugar coating, but she kept her balance, desperate to make it to the bridge. The bandits weren't far behind. Her breath hitched as she reached the edge of the bridge, the mist swirling around her, making it impossible to see what lay ahead. In that moment, as she sprinted across the bridge, her foot slipped on the slick sugar, and she teetered dangerously. Her heart raced as she felt herself losing balance. She lurched forward, arms flailing, as she almost plunged into the Cola River below. Then, just as the bandits were closing in on her, a massive, booming voice echoed from above.
Up here!
Lucy looked up in shock to see Poppy, now riding a giant popcorn dragon. The dragon's buttery wings glowed in the dim light, casting enormous shadows across the bridge and over the bandits below. Its body was vast, covered in buttery golden scales that sparkled with every beat of its wings. The dragon roared, sending a gust of wind through the air, knocking the bandits off balance.
Hop on, Lucy!
Poppy shouted.
I'll get us out of here!
Without a second thought, Lucy scrambled up the dragon's back, clinging to its warm, buttery scales. The dragon spread its wings wide, and with a powerful flap, they were airborne, soaring high above the bridge and the chaos below. The bandits were left behind, shaking their fists and cursing in the distance.
Holy popcorn!
Lucy breathed, her heart still racing from the close call.
I'm riding a popcorn dragon!
Poppy laughed, the sound light and carefree once more.
Welcome to the adventure, Lucy! And trust me, we're just getting started!
As they soared higher into the sky, the wind rushing through Lucy's hair, she couldn't help but let out a triumphant laugh of her own. She had no idea what else this crazy quest had in store for her, but one thing was for sure, she wasn't backing down. She was in this for the long haul.